Main Abi B Lily, Kohar Saturday Ruby's Diner, Lajata Hoon, or Abi B Wahi Order Karta Hoon, Jo Hamisha, Karta Tha, Lekan Kuch, Mahino Tak, Main Darwazi Ki Taraf Peeth Kar Kanahi Baith Shukta, Tha. Din Lily Ni Apni Pancakes, Say Nazar Adhakar Kaha Dad. Op Fear Say, Wo Walla, Kam Kar Rehi Hain. Mudj Patabi Nahi, Thamain Kaya, Kar Rahahun. Jabtak Main Deka Kamara Hoth Apni Hip. K Pass Thought Hai Zabi B Intazar, Kara Hoke Koi Mudj. Handcuff Lagade. Yeah, whoa. Hissa Hijo Koi Nahi. Batata Jab Opgo Apni. Betty K Samzalil. Kia J. Yeah, Cuff Sutarn. Kabod Katam. Nahi Hota. Yeah, Bus. Apakander. Kahin Baith. Jata Hai. Choop Chop. Wapas. Ane Kamuka. Dunt Hugh. I still take Lily to Ruby's Diner every Saturday morning. I still order the same thing every time. But for a few months after everything happened, I couldn't sit facing away from the door. I'd pick the booth in the corner, back to the wall, eyes on the entrance, like some kind of habit I couldn't shake. My daughter noticed before I did. She looked up from her pancakes one morning and said, "You're doing the thing again, Dad." I didn't even know what she meant at first. Then I realized I had my hand resting near my hip, like I was still waiting for someone to slap cuffs on me. That's the part nobody tells you about being humiliated in front of your kid. It doesn't end when they take the cuffs off. It just moves into your body somewhere and sits there, quiet, waiting for a reason to come back out. I should back up and tell this properly, because it didn't start the way you'd think, and it didn't end the way I expected either. My name's Mark. I'm 41, and I've been a single dad for 4 years. Since my wife Renee passed from an aneurysm on a completely normal Tuesday. One day she was making coffee and complaining about the neighbor's dog. The next day she was gone. And I had a 6-year-old asking me where Mommy went, and I genuinely did not have an answer that made any sense to either of us. Grief with a little kid is a strange thing. You don't get to fall apart on your own schedule. You fall apart in the 15 minutes between dropping her at school and getting to work, and then you put your face back together and you go be a dad again by 3 p.m. I work for the federal government. I don't usually lead with what I do, because in my experience people either get weird and deferential about it, or weird and suspicious about it. Honestly, most days I'd rather just be a guy eating breakfast with his kid than whatever title is on my badge. For the purposes of this story, just know I have a job that involves a lot of travel, a lot of hotel rooms, long stretches where I'm not the one making dinner, and not nearly enough time with my daughter. That's exactly why Saturday mornings at Ruby's became sacred to us. No phone calls, no laptop open on the table, just me and Lily and pancakes, and her telling me about whatever she was currently obsessed with, which that month was horses. Specifically, whether horses can be scared of thunder the same way dogs are, a question she asked me 4 separate times that week, like maybe the answer would change if she asked it differently. We'd been going to Ruby's for about 8 months, ever since a work assignment brought us out to this small town for an extended stretch, and I decided, screw it. We're going to have a normal life here, even if it's temporary. Temporary is a weird word when you're raising a kid. Everything feels temporary and permanent at the same time. Ruby's is one of those diners with cracked vinyl booths, a laminated menu that hasn't changed prices in probably a decade, and a waitress named Dot who's worked there since Reagan was president, or so she claims, and I've never had a reason to doubt her. Knew our order by the 3rd week. Lily called her the pancake lady, and Dot, who I don't think had been called anything that affectionate by a kid in years, seemed to genuinely light up every time she heard it. That Saturday started like any other. I was tired. I'd flown in from DC the night before on maybe 4 hours of sleep. My back was tight from an economy seat that didn't recline properly. And I remember thinking as I buckled Lily into the car that morning that all I wanted out of the day was pancakes and quiet. I wasn't going to miss our morning for exhaustion, some things you protect even when you're running on fumes. Lily was mid-sentence about a horse she'd seen in a library book. Something about how its mane looked like it had been brushed by a professional. When the bell over the door rang, and a sheriff's deputy walked in, followed by a man in his 50s I didn't recognize, button-down shirt, khakis, the kind of guy who looks like he owns something in town, a store or a lot or a piece of the bank, I didn't think anything of it. People walk into diners, and the man in his 50s leaned toward the deputy, pointed at me, said something I couldn't hear over the sound of the griddle. I found out later his name was Gerald Whitfield. He owns the hardware store, and, from what I gather, half the strip mall on Main Street. 2 nights before, his neighbor's garage had been broken into, tools taken, nothing violent, but enough to rattle a quiet street that wasn't used to that kind of thing. Gerald had nothing to do with me, and I had nothing to do with his neighbor's garage. But he'd noticed my rental car parked outside the Blue Spruce Motel for 3 straight nights running, and in a town where everybody's plates are local and everybody knows everybody's car, and out-of-state rentals sitting outside a cheap motel for that long apparently reads as somebody casing the area. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He was scared, in the specific way people get scared after something happens close to their own house, and he made a call. And in a town this size, that call goes straight to Sheriff Boyd Kessler. No filter in between. Saw Kessler walk in behind the deputy, and I watched her whole face change, just for a second, like a cloud passing. She leaned toward an older man, sitting alone in the next booth, and murmured something low. I only caught 2 words. Not again. I didn't know what that meant yet. I'd find out, and it would sit with me longer than almost anything else that happened that day. Kessler walked over to our table slow, thumbs hooked in his belt. That particular walk some men do when they want you to know they're enjoying the walk, like the 10 feet between the door and my booth was a stage. Sir, I need you to step outside with me. I asked what this was about. Calm, because that's just who I am. 20 years of a career that trains the panic out of you or maybe just buries it somewhere you can't feel it in the moment. Can you tell me what's going on, officer? Sheriff, he corrected, like that was the important part of the sentence. And no, I can't. Not until you're outside. Lily's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She looked at me, then at him, then back at me. And I could see her doing the thing kids do where they're trying to read your face to figure out how scared they're allowed to be. I told her, it's okay, baby. Stay right here with Dot. I'll be right back. And I got up slow. Hands visible, no sudden moves. Because that's a habit too. One I didn't even choose. It's just there now, permanently installed. That's when Lily said, the thing that still gets me, even now, months later, telling this story. Calm as anything, like she was stating a fact about the weather. My dad has a badge too. Kessler actually laughed. Not cruel, just amused. The way adults laugh at kids saying something they think is cute and harmless. I bet he does, sweetheart. He walked me out to the parking lot, and by the time we got there, I could feel he'd already decided something about me. Some men make up their mind about you in the first 4 seconds and spend the rest of the interaction looking for evidence to support it. He asked for ID. I gave him my driver's license. He asked what I was doing in town. I told him I was here for work and staying at the Blue Spruce with my daughter. I asked what kind of work. I said I work for the federal government and left it there because frankly it wasn't his business yet, and also because in 20 years I've learned that dropping your title in a tense situation makes some men worse, not better. Men hear federal and get more careful, so others hear it as a challenge. That was my mistake, if you can call it that. My calm, my short answers, all of it read to him as arrogance instead of what it actually was, which was a guy who didn't want to escalate a situation in front of his 8-year-old. You're being awfully cagey for an innocent man, he said. I'm being efficient, I said. I've got a daughter inside eating breakfast alone. He cuffed me right there in the parking lot. Told me there'd been a break-in reported, and I matched a description, and he needed to hold me until dispatch cleared it. I didn't fight it. I've been trained not to escalate physical situations, and honestly, some small clinical part of my brain was thinking, this will clear up in 10 minutes. Don't make it worse than it needs to be. Think about Lily's face when this is over. Not right now. I didn't count on the fact that a college kid to cars over was filming a day in my small town. It's a video for whatever platform kids use now. And he'd turned his phone toward us right as the cuffs went on. It's half out of nosiness, half because it was already streaming live to a few hundred people who had no idea what they were about to watch. Neither Kessler nor I had any idea either. We were just 2 men in a parking lot, one of us in cuffs, both of us completely unaware we had an audience. Dispatch came back in about 6 minutes. No match. Wrong height, wrong build, wrong everything. None of it lining up with whatever description they'd been given. I heard it crackle through his radio, flat and clear. I thought, okay, now he uncuffs me. We go back inside. This is a bad Saturday, but a short one, and Lily and I will still make it home before her pancakes get too cold to enjoy. Instead, he stood there another few minutes, talking to his deputy in low tones, glancing at the diner window where I could see, holding Lily's hand through the glass, both of them watching. I understand now what he was doing, or at least I think I do. He had a deputy and Gerald Whitfield both watching him work. And uncuffing a man immediately after being told he was wrong would have looked to him like he'd screwed up in public. So instead of just letting me go, he walked me to the cruiser, put me in the back seat, said he wanted to verify a few more things, which I've come to understand is code for saving face in front of an audience you didn't ask for. That's when my phone, still in my jacket pocket in the front seat, started buzzing. Kessler picked it up to silence it and saw the screen. He told me later, almost sheepish, that he almost didn't say anything. But he was bored and irritated sitting there waiting on nothing, so he read it out loud, like a joke to whoever was listening. Deputy Director Hayes is calling you. Real cute. He didn't know that name meant anything. I did. Hayes doesn't call on a Saturday morning unless something is actively on fire somewhere. And it was not a good feeling, sitting in the back of a cruiser. Watching my phone light up with a name that meant work was trying to reach me, while I had exactly zero ability to answer it. He radioed it into his own chief as a joke. I heard him say it, half laughing. Get this, guys. Phone says Deputy Director Hayes. Like I'm supposed to be impressed. There was a pause on the radio, long enough that I noticed it. Then his chief's voice came back, and it wasn't laughing anymore. Boyd. Say the last name on that license again. Delaney, Kessler said, a little uncertain now. Silence. Then Boyd, tell me you didn't just say Delaney. I still don't know exactly what went through Kessler's head in that silence, but I watched his face change color in the rearview mirror, watched something shift behind his eyes. The particular look of a man doing fast math on how bad a morning is about to get. What none of us knew yet was that the college kid's video hadn't just been sitting quietly on his phone. It had been live streaming the whole time to his followers, and within 20 minutes, someone in the comments had frozen a frame of my face and written something like, "Wait, this dude testified in front of Congress like 6 months ago?" and tagged the clip to a few bigger accounts. By the time Kessler had his cruiser door open to let me out, the video had 4,000 views and climbing, and I hadn't even been formally released yet. The town found out who I was before the sheriff's department had fully processed it themselves. That's a strange feeling, being identified by strangers on the internet before the man standing 3 feet from you knows who you are. He opened the door, took the cuffs off, and started in on an apology that had the tone of a man trying to keep a fire contained to one room of the house before it reaches the rest. Look, we can keep this between us. This doesn't need to go anywhere. I rubbed my wrists and looked at him. Not angry exactly, just tired in a way that had nothing to do with the 4 hours of sleep. You're going to want to sit down and write this up accurately, I said. Every part of it, because it's already not staying between us. He didn't understand yet what I meant. He understood about 2 hours later, when his chief called him back into the station and put a laptop in front of him with a view count that had climbed past 30,000. I want to be honest about something, because this is where I could have gone a very different direction, and I thought hard about it, that whole weekend, and for a while after. My first instinct wasn't to bury this man, it was to make sure Lily was okay, and she was mostly, though she asked me that night while I was tucking her in. Why the sheriff didn't believe me even after the radio said I wasn't the bad guy. I didn't have a clean answer for her. I told her something like, sometimes grown-ups get so worried about looking wrong that they keep doing the wrong thing longer than they should. She thought about that for a second and said, that's dumb, which honestly is about as good a summary of the whole situation as I've heard from anyone, adult or otherwise. My second instinct, once I had a little distance from it, once the adrenaline wore off and I could think straight again, was not revenge. It was a question. Dot's not again kept nagging at me all weekend, the way a small detail does when it doesn't fit cleanly into the story you're telling yourself. So instead of pursuing anything personal against Kessler, I asked a colleague to quietly pull the department's public complaint history, kind of records any citizen can request through the right channels. What came back wasn't one incident. It was 6, over 3 years, mostly against seasonal workers passing through for harvest season, a couple of black families on road trips who'd stopped for gas. One teenager stopped for looking like he didn't belong outside his own apartment complex in his own town at 10 in the morning. None of it had gone anywhere before. Small towns protect their own, and nobody with any leverage had ever been on the other end of Kessler's temper before me. That's the part that actually mattered to me, if I'm being honest. Not what happened to me in that parking lot. What happened to those 6 people who didn't have a deputy director's name on their phone screen to change how the story ended? I gave a full statement to the county, and separately, that complaint record ended up in front of people who could actually look at a pattern, instead of a single embarrassing incident. Kessler was placed on leave within the month, while a civil rights review went through the proper channels. Eventually, he didn't return to the job. I didn't ask for that specific outcome. I asked for the pattern to be looked at honestly, and it was. And the review found what it found. The video, for what it's worth, blew up a lot bigger than I ever wanted it to. I had reporters calling my office for weeks, a couple of national outlets picking it up, strangers recognizing me at a gas station 2 towns over. I didn't do interviews. I don't think that footage needed my commentary layered on top of it. It said what it said, plainly, without my help. We still live in that town, at least for now, and we still go to Ruby's most Saturdays. Still calls Lily the pancake lady's daughter, which never made grammatical sense, but Lily loves it anyway, wears it like a title. Gerald Whitfield, the hardware store owner, actually came and found me a few weeks after, apologized himself. No lawyer, no prompting. Just a nervous man standing in a parking lot telling me he was sorry for the call he made. I told him honestly I didn't hold it against him. He saw something that looked odd to him and made a call out of fear for his neighborhood. It's not a crime, and it's not even really a mistake in the way people mean when they say that word. It's just a person having a nervous moment and a nervous week. The person who actually mattered in all this wasn't the one who called it in. It was the one who decided how to handle it once he got there, and had every chance to do it differently and didn't, not until the ground shifted under him. A few months later, we were in our usual booth, corner seat, my back finally starting to relax against the wall a little more each week. And Lily was drawing a horse on a napkin with one of Dot's pens, tongue poking out the side of her mouth the way it does when she's concentrating hard. Out of absolutely nowhere, not looking up from the napkin, she said, "You know what I remember most? You didn't yell. That's how I know you were right." I didn't say anything for a second because I didn't trust my voice not to crack in the middle of a diner on a Saturday morning. She went back to her horse like she hadn't just leveled me completely, like she hadn't just handed me unprompted. The exact lesson I would have spent years trying to teach her if I'd had the chance to plan it out. I think about that moment a lot more than I think about Kessler, honestly. More than the cuffs, more than the parking lot, more than the video, and the calls from reporters, and the review that eventually cost him his job. I think about the fact that my 8-year-old was watching how I handled being humiliated more closely, and I was watching myself handle it. And somehow she walked away from that morning with exactly the lesson I'd have wanted for her, without me ever having to say a word about it. I still don't love sitting with my back to the door. Old habits, I guess. Or maybe not even old, just new ones I picked up that day and haven't managed to put down yet. But I'm working on it, one Saturday at a time, and it gets a little easier each week. I don't know if there's a clean moral here beyond the obvious one. Wrong is wrong, even when you're sure you're right. And it's worth checking twice before you decide someone's guilty, just because they're calm about it. Because calm doesn't mean guilty. Sometimes it just means a person who's had a lot of practice not falling apart in front of their kid. I keep thinking about how differently that morning could have gone if I'd raised my voice in that parking lot, or if that college kid hadn't happened to be filming, or if Dot hadn't been the kind of woman who quietly holds a scared kid's hand through a window without being asked to. I guess I'm still not totally sure how to feel about the whole thing, if I'm being fully honest. Part of me feels like justice actually worked for once, for people who never got that chance before me. 6 people whose complaints sat in a drawer for years until mine happened to land on the right desk. Part of me still gets a small flash of that parking lot every time I hear a car door shut too hard behind me. A little spike of something I don't have a name for yet. What would you all have done differently, if anything? Genuinely curious how this reads from the outside.